Hi, this is Steve Robbins, former host of the Get It Done Guys quick and dirty tips to work less and do more. Today, we're going to be reviewing the characters that have appeared in the Get It Done Guy podcast and where they came from and what I know about what happens to them next. Now, what's happening to me next is getitdonegroups.com, which is a program to help you get things done, especially if you have control over your own time and you need some structure and want to support community. You can check it out at getitdonegroups.com. You can also find out there, if you sign up for the notification list, about upcoming Do It Days, which are single days that help you make extreme productivity. And Do It Days are one component of Get It Done Groups. So that's what I'm up to now. Now let's talk about the characters. Most of the characters in the Get It Done Guy podcast have been based on real people or real things of significance to my life, with only a couple of exceptions. So first off, Chris. Now, for those of you who have been following, you know that Chris is a mind-reading ex-active duty military who came back from Iraq and is reintegrating into civilian society, and thus has an internship at Bernice's store, Green Growing Things. Now, at some point, Chris was in Baghdad and, polished a lamp, and something happened, and now Chris does seem to have mind-reading powers, which, although sometimes awkward, enables Chris to get out ahead of it when Bernice is preparing the financials for the store in anticipation of doing some acquisitions. Chris's story arc is going to continue, or rather, where Chris's story arc goes from here is that Chris gets discovered once again by the military and intrigued with their mind-reading powers. They offer Chris a position in military intelligence. It turns out that when you are generic enough that you can change your appearance at a whim and you can be thin and fat and old and young and all of those wonderful things. Also, when you can read minds, it makes for being a great ground operative. Just saying. Then there's Thomas. Thomas is Europa's 17-year-old angst-ridden cybernetic son with an IQ of 400 or 426, something along those lines. Very, very smart, but like your typical 17-year-olds, let's just say not super high on the emotional intelligence spectrum. Thomas has just been taking his very first forays into romance. He had an affair with the toaster, which ended badly. There's no use crying over burnt toast. But to drown his sorrows, he decided to apply to MIT for college. Of course, he got in. He has an IQ of 426. And he has decided already he's going to be living in the dorm called East Campus, which is right near some of the robotics labs. I don't know whether he's planning on building his next significant other or meeting another human person who can become his significant other, and together they can build robots. In any event, Thomas is really going headlong into adulthood here, and all I can say is, dude, go for it. Intern MG is based on a real person. The real person was my best friend and business partner for a number of years, and one of the most precocious, obnoxiously smart people I've ever met. In the time that I got to know him, he went ahead and got belted in Krav Maga. He became a journalist. He became an EMT. He got front-page newspaper stories published in national newspapers. It was kind of unreal. And what made it worse, of course, is that he was so nice and humble about the whole thing. He was just sort of like, oh yeah, I guess I'm doing this thing now. There is nothing more infuriating than an unbelievable overachiever combined with genuine modesty and being a good person. MG graduated from college and is now off on adventures who knows where. MG, if you are seeing this or listening to the Get Done Guy podcast, feel free to drop a line. I'd love to know what you're up to. The character MG, however, vanished mysteriously. All that was found was one of his sneakers outside the Audrey 2 feeding pens. Now, one might assume, well, if there's a sneaker left there, maybe one of the Audrey 2s got a little bit rambunctious and snatched him up. But would they? There was only one sneaker left, which means there's another one unaccounted for, and there was no other evidence that he had anything to do with the Audrey 2 holding pens. So whatever the mysterious disappearance of MG was, he may reappear at any time. My theory is that he's probably gone underground, and he's the one responsible for connecting up Chris with military intelligence. He is no doubt acting himself as some sort of super spy collecting intelligence, because when you're as bright as he is, for goodness sake, everyone knows that you may as well use it. Thomas's mother is Europa. Europa is based on the character Europa from the Thomas Dolby songs Europa and the Pirate Twins, which came out sometime in the mid 80s, and then Eastern Bloc, which was Europa and the Pirate Twins Part 2, that was a song that came out of the mid 90s that was co-written, I believe, with David Lee Roth. I'm not totally positive. In any event, Europa in the first one is a spry, wonderful young woman who becomes an internationally famous pop star, becomes so successful that, of course, she leaves her previous childhood friends behind. And Europa in the second one has something mysterious to do with the Eastern Bloc. So, Europa, by day, is a mild-mannered cashier at Green Growing Things, Bernice's plant store. But by night, she actually is the secret overlord of the entire Eastern Bloc. This is a woman who is used to doing things on a big scale and a very, very, very powerful personality in her own right. However, there's a limit to how much she can do. And it turns out Europa's just getting overloaded. She's been juggling thousands of things, different countries, difficult personalities, and she's just at the point where, you know what? She's realized her son is already applying to college and getting in. She has limited time with him. So Europa is going to step down. She's decided to hand off her empire to one of her minions, Angela Merkel, and she's really pissed at Vlad right now. She's very unhappy with what he's doing on the world stage. She's going to hand over the Eastern Bloc to Angela Merkel to run from secret, and Europa's going to go home and basically be a stay-at-home mom for a year so that she can really enjoy some quality time with Thomas before he goes off to school. I give her about a week until she gets restless and tries to do who knows what. All we know is that it's going to be big. Then there's Grandma Cuddles of Grandma Cuddles Daycare. Grandma Cuddles is not based on anyone that I know, thank goodness. She's just a sweet little gray-haired grandma type who has a lot of kids under her care and believes in making sure they learn how to do things right. I mean, she also has defense contracts. But you know, Grandma Cuddles is what Grandma Cuddles says she is. Just a sweet old lady trying to help young tykes make their way in the world. Now, it does turn out that recently Grandma Cuddles was trying to regain some of her youthful flexibility. In an attempt to touch her kneecaps, she discovered yoga. And being a get-it-done kind of person, she went right off to study with the Dalai Lama. Now, we tried to tell her the Dalai Lama does not teach yoga. He teaches Buddhism, very different. It's a whole spirituality thing. There was no stopping her. She knows that pretty soon she'll be able to touch her toes and even hold the bird of paradise pose. Well, she's not based on anyone real. And the next thing that happens in her story arc is indeed, she goes off to study with the Dalai Lama and becomes enlightened. In giving up attachment to all material things, Grandma Cuddles simply lets her daycare center go. And she cedes it over to Chip and Claire, who we'll get to in a moment, who are her two loyal employees. And Grandma goes off to become an enlightened being. Believe me, we never saw that coming. But you know what? Grandma is always full of surprises. Grandma's two loyal minions are Chip and Claire. Now, Chip and Claire are real people. And in fact, they do roughly in real life what they do in the podcast. Chip is an accountant and Claire is a landscape architect. They are longtime Get It Done Guy listeners. They have been with me basically since the very beginning. Claire and Chip were both with me during the series of Get It Done days, of Do It days, the series of Do It days that I used to write my book. So they have been through thick and thin with me, and then more recently, when I founded Get It Done groups, they were two of the people who came over to help kick them off, and Claire was writing her book. And so in the last 18 months, the Get It Done group has been there to support her, and she got it done while she was actually on a Do It day. We were there for her getting it done. Actually, I wasn't, but some people were. And what I was there for was the day that she received the very first printed copy from the publisher. So it was awesome and amazing and incredible. Claire and Chip get given Grandma Cuddles daycare by Grandma Cuddles. And suddenly they have a daycare center to do with. And, you know, they're not sure they're really that into defense contracting, but they don't really know what to do next. So they're looking around for opportunities, what to do with this amazingly successful daycare center. And last, and certainly not least, are the characters who were the very first ones that I came up with. Now, let's be clear. When I came up with Bernice and Melvin, I thought that I made them up out of whole cloth. It took me a good 4 years to realize, no, I didn't. Bernice and Melvin are my two roommates from my senior year in high school. The real Bernice didn't own a plant store. The real Bernice owned a bookstore. The real Melvin was a computer programmer. And the Bernice who owned the bookstore pretty much was the well, I mean, I was 18 years old, so I kind of don't want to say mother figure, but she was very much the center of activity. She was the person who had things under control. She had her act together. She was the mother hen, and the two of them were very much the inspiration for Bernice and Melvin. Whenever I think of Bernice and Melvin, I actually picture them. So you'd wonder why I hadn't realized earlier that that's who they were based on. Now, Bernice and Melvin finally do get married. They have a big, just flat out wonderful wedding, and for their honeymoon, they decide to take an Arctic cruise. So they head off to the North Pole, take an Arctic cruise, only there's no North Pole. It's melted. Well, this will not do. So Bernice gives this a lot of thought and decides, this global warming thing, someone's got to take care of it, and if no one else is, it's going to be her. So she returns to Green Growing Things. And by the way, Green Growing Things was the name of a plant store that my mother started back when I was a teenager. So that's where the name comes from. Bernice returns to Green Growing Things, absolutely intent on creating a new strain of algae and a new strain of plant that can absorb all of the excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and give off pure, healthful oxygen. She and Melvin retrained themselves to be experimental and bench biologists. They get so engrossed in this that Bernice realizes she can't continue to run the store at the same time. Well, it turns out that after a week alone with Thomas, not running half of the world, Europa's already bored. Of course she is. She just needs something to occupy her extra spare time. So what she's decided is that she is going to take over from Bernice and Melvin, with their blessing, of course, and run the Green Growing Things Administration, expand it to become a worldwide empire and distribution network. So once the algae is ready and the special plant breeds are ready, there will be a waiting way to get them to all corners of the world to combat global warming instantly on a global scale. Europa feels much better about this. She's used to working on a global scale. This whole business about limiting herself to just her apartment, no. 1 week was plenty of that. And then Chip and Claire, being in charge of Grandma Cuddles, have realized that their skills, too, can help with this saving the world effort. Not only that, but kids make great gardeners. So they have decided to merge Grandma Cuddles with Green Growing Things, allowing the kids to have experience actually creating life with their bare hands. And let's not get too deeply into that because sometimes they take things a little more literally than I mean them. The kids will be helping to cultivate and farm the new breeds of algae. Claire will make sure that everything is positioned. She understands all of the different types of environments and ecosystems. She'll make sure that there is a plant for every ecological niche. And of course, Chip will make sure that all of it happens, makes a profit, and everyone goes home happily, well paid, and making everything a better place. So that's as far as I know the characters' stories. And I don't know how it ends up. I don't know if they've successfully developed the new plant breeds in time, but it's kind of amazing because who would have expected a daycare center and a tiny chain of 3 plant stores to suddenly become the saviors of humankind? I'm not saying it's really going to happen, but I'm not saying that it's not. In any event, thank you very much for taking this little time with me to explore the different characters and how they all fit together. Thank you so much for being part of the Get It Done Guy audience and for taking the time to come experience this. And you know what? If you want a community to support you in getting things done, a community I'm part of, so you can continue to interact with me, only it'll be genuinely interactive, not just listening to my voice, check out getitdonegroups.com. And whether you check them out or not, whether you go your own way or not, I hope that the material, the stories, and the insight that I have been able to communicate helps you work a little less, do a little more, and have a great life. Thank you again.